So let's dive into some old naval charts today. That's the menu of today. Can you eat that? Well, we can tell you a little bit about that since the Renaissance, and when was the Renaissance? In Denmark, it was in the 17th century. There has been made charts for navigation here in Denmark. And some guys and dolls, they found out that they would like to compare these maps with the modern maps. So as I asked Thomas, so would it be possible then to navigate a drone that should navigate a pilot ship in the Danish Straits out from these maps? Probably not, because as you will recognize this during this tidbit, these charts were quite different what we consider as the right chart of today. And today you're also going to learn a new word, or at least I did, and that word is polynomium. Okay, I'm gonna see how many of you afterwards who knows that word, because that is a very, very important word of today. So let's dive into the latest research from RUC, Roskilde University of Roskilde, RUC. It is this tidbit has come to the program due to a collaboration between Maritime Research Alliance and MARLOC. And every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, we are presenting these awesome, hot and spicy research results here on the Tidbit channel. So what's a tidbit? I can see from the participant list that not all of you have been around tidbits before. So it's nice and easy, short and sweet, as we say. So it's 15 minutes of presentation, spiced up with 15 minutes of Q&A, followed by the presentation of Thomas today. And then it is in these cozy settings. I really love the setting of Thomas. That is in his nice living room. And I'm here in my kitchen with one of my favorite paintings behind. So no blurred background, no boring logo backgrounds and so on. It's just as you get it. And it's unglossy. So if we do a little error, it's just, we as we say in Danish, vi kører på vejen, som vi lægger den. I don't remember the English expression for that, and that's a part of it. So it's 12 o'clock, so you're also very welcome to prepare your lunch or eat your lunch while you are leaning back, relaxing and enjoying this snack that we have prepared for you. My name is Henriette Dybkjær. I'm from MARLOC, and I'm your host today, so I will be the one giving the questions to Thomas afterwards that you will write out in the chat if you have some. So let's get started. Let's have a cheers for an awesome tidbit with Thomas. Cheers with you, Thomas. I know you just got a great cup of coffee. A warm welcome to Thomas Theis Nielsen, who is Associate Professor at RUC. The stage is yours, or the screen is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Henriette, and welcome all. What I'm going to do first is stop fiddling around and see if I can share my screen with you. Hopefully now you can all see my presentation. And I can't see any of you now. I can see myself, which is always a little awkward. Everything is okay?
Yes, just go
Excellent.
ahead.
Excellent. So thank you very much for the invitation to come here today and present this work. I should say that this is actually work that dates back a few years. It was a collaboration between Roskilde University, RUC, which is the proper acronym and nomenclature here, that it used to be a university center. We're no longer a university center, but the name RUC was so engraved in everyone that we stuck with the RUC and then Roskilde University. Also participating was the Royal Danish Library and the Naval Museum, which I hope is the correct term in English. So the topic of today's talk, what I am going to present to you, is a drive to digitize and analyze old Danish naval charts of different size and quality. At the Royal Danish Library, there is a lot of old maps. They have a whole section filled with old maps, and some of them are fragile, some of them are you have to handle with a lot of care. And also at the museum in Helsingør, there's a collection of old maps. And part of the background for this study was to make these maps more accessible to the public. You can't just walk in and see these old maps. Some of them will simply fall apart if you don't handle them properly. And obviously some of them are considered significant pieces of historical evidence in research and in cultural connections. So there's a need to make these available for the public to see and engage with these maps, and also certainly able to preserve them even better. You don't have to take them in and out of the drawers and the big cupboards all the time. And finally, also apart from the drive to make them accessible, we were also interested in whether or not we can actually automate some of these procedures that will take an old map and make it available on an internet platform of some kind. So that's the background. And the way it worked was basically that between the library and the museum, they would scan the maps, which was not an easy thing because some of these maps are really big and we need to scan them in a proper resolution. So it was quite a drive to have them actually scanned. And then they would be sent to Roskilde University, where we hired a number of students who were working for us in trying to correct these maps in order for us to present them on an internet platform. So what I'm going to be talking about is how do you actually take an old map like these maps, which some of them date. I'll show you some examples, and I'll end up by also presenting to you the platform on which these are available today. But how do you actually prepare the maps to be presented in a platform like that? That is the part of the work that we were doing at Roskilde University. So basically, this is just an example of one of the maps that we were working on. This is an old naval chart from 1718, prepared by Jens Sørensen, the royal cartographer, and presumably also somewhat of a spy. Now, he would sail the Danish and Swedish waters and further and map various issues. He has mapped certainly Kattegat and the routes to Norway several times. And he would also mark, obviously, all the Swedish military installations and other interesting things, with an eye for certainly the Navy to be able to operate, but possibly also for other uses. So this map is actually, as far as I can read the ancient Danish, is actually a map that has been presented to the king, which is not that surprising because usually in 1718, the king and only a handful of people would actually have the kind of monetary basis to do a map like this. There's an English proverb that says that everyone should be allowed to have a map, or should be able to afford to buy a map, assuming that the king will buy the first one. So that kind of underlines the idea that this is important work and it's very expensive work. And it's not by coincidence that maps, relatively detailed maps that seem to be different from the medieval maps, which are much more fantastic and filled with dragons and weird animals. Once we get to the end of the Renaissance, we see the occurrence of the modern states, and this is when you begin to have an interest in mapping your territory. So also the Danish Academy of Sciences produces their first real map of Denmark around 1750 to 80, something like that. So it all fits together, and there's a drive to map the kingdom. But again, this map is 2 meters by 2 meters, something like that, and stored in the Royal Library, and you can't just walk in and grab it and look at it. So we're trying here to find a way to present it, and present it in a way that makes sense for today. So what is the context of the map? how does it align with modern day maps? Does it actually show the same things that we would expect to see in a map today? So the task is, can we make Jens Sørensen's map, as we just saw, can we actually make that map to conform to a map outline as we would expect the Baltic to look today? So we have a different means of mapping today, and then this is pretty much the way that we are agreeing that the Baltic will look. Obviously, the national borders will change, but the outline stays more or less the same, the coastal outline. So that's the task. Can we actually do that? Now, in order to compare the two maps, we need to understand a little bit about how computers work with maps, and basically also how maps work in their own right. In any map you take out, you'll find that it has a superimposed system of coordinates. Also, Jens Sørensen's map has coordinates in some kind, but we don't know what coordinates. On the other hand, the map that I just showed you from, in this case, the European Environmental Agency, has a very clearly defined coordinate system superimposed onto itself. So the task is taking the unknown coordinate system to our left. And mind you, I just drew up a very rectangular Gaussian looking coordinate system here. That might not actually be the case. It can be skewed, it can be tilted in various ways, or it can be just really weird. We don't know, but we want to transfer the left-hand side coordinate system into the right-hand coordinate system, because in the right-hand coordinate system, we know that it actually conforms to north-south, and we can measure latitude, longitude, or UGM coordinates, or whatever we would want to measure on the map. And once we have that particular coordinate system superimposed upon our map, we can compare it with other contemporary maps. So basically what we're looking for is some way of transforming the coordinates u and v into coordinates x and y. That's just a t. It's just basically looking for a mathematical expression to convert coordinates from one system to another system. We can do this in various ways, and this is where the word polynomial that Henriette was talking about comes in, that we can calculate, and we're not doing this manually, obviously we have software that does this, is we can calculate various models by which we can convert from u, v to x, y coordinates. These can be in a first, second, or third order polynomial, depending on the type of distortion we find in the original image. And this is where we get into somewhat muddy waters, because again, there is no real answer here. This is a question of looking at the maps, trying to figure out which model seems to produce the best results. You can also do this by adding more points and then going back and actually evaluating which of the models seem to be working best. That is what we did in this small project. We would actually make a number of points, take half of them to calculate the model, and use the other half to validate the model in order to have the version of the map that would produce the least error. So it is as precise as possible. At the same time, we also have to keep in mind that if, for instance, Denmark is in the center of our coordinate system, we make a lot of points in and around Denmark, the model will probably produce a very good result for the central parts of the image, which will be transferred more or less precisely. But the further we get away from the central parts of the new map, the higher the distortion of the map will be, and it can turn into very many different things. So in general, we would try to limit the order of the polynomial to a first or second order, simply in order to avoid too much distortion on the edges of the maps. Okay, I'm getting a little bit lost in detail here. I'll move along. This is just an expression or an illustration of the process that we have the original data, and we use the mathematical model that we just created, either by a first, second, or third order polynomial. And as you can see in the first order, you can kind of tilt the image, and you can pull it either in X or Y direction. In the second order polynomial, you can also kind of squeeze it so that it bubbles up in the middle. It becomes concave or convex. Or what you can do is you can use a third order polynomial, in which case you can also squeeze the map in various directions and magnitudes. And as we increase the order, obviously the result gets, or potentially gets, more and more strange to look at if we're not very careful with all the points that we need to do this. So getting back to Jens Sørensen's map of the Baltics here, we see the original map here again. And as you can see, Norway and Sweden might be a little bit thick at the at the route here for going across. And once we use our deformation model to transfer from one system of coordinates into another system of coordinates, we get a result like this. And you can quite clearly see from the outline of the image that something has happened that is not linear. It's not just tilted the image, it's actually also what seems to be bent the image. It's pushed it a little bit on the edges to kind of bubble a little bit up. Obviously, again, we are doing our best to minimize errors and have a lot of points all around the image. And this version of the map actually seems to be the best fit that we can come up with. So that now in this version of the map, we can actually compare Jens Sørensen's old map with contemporary maps, because over here in the right-hand image now we have an image that has north-south coordinates. But as I said, it's not precise. And the project, what we did with the project was we would submit the maps to Historiskatlas, which is a fantastic source of old maps of Denmark. Now, what I did was I just superimposed 3 different maps with the outline of Skagen. And as you can see, the 1812 map seems to hit it pretty well, but both the 1709 and the 1718, both of them Jens Sørensen map, seems to be somewhat off, up to, I don't know, it's about 30 kilometers off. And this is probably because there's been a lot of different points, and every point has to be corrected in a way that we minimize the general error. So even with a general error distributed across the entire map, we still get something like a 30-kilometer misrepresentation of the image. But that is the best that we can do with some of these old maps. But still, we have a way of showing the images and making them available now. And as it says, thanks for your attention, but we're not quite there yet, because I want to show you also Historiskatlas and how that actually presents the data. And I'll do it really fast because I see that I am already running out of time. Hey, I just need to share a new screen, which will be this one. Here you go. Now, hopefully you can all see my internet browser, and you can see that I access the...
Thomas.
Can you see it?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So it's just an internet browser. It's a internet site, historiskatlas.dk. And what you have on your left hand is all the different maps that have been produced. Now I just show you some of the historical maps. Obviously, there's tons of also more contemporary maps. But this is actually the map that we were just looking at, Jens Sørensen's map of Skagerrak and Kattegat. We can zoom in, we can zoom out, and you'll recognize the shape of the map here. Now, what is interesting is to zoom in a little bit. Now we could, for instance, zoom in on one of the other naval charts here, a chart from 1700 exactly. Yes, as we zoom in, you can see this is the outline of the map. And again, you see that this map apparently, it hasn't been distorted in any way. It's just kind of been tilted, and it looks more or less as it matches the coast, the contemporary coastline of Øresund here. This map has probably been easier to do because we've been able to work with the Kronborg and probably also the castle in Copenhagen, different fixed structures that haven't moved. So it's easier to orient the map correctly. And you can see also the outline of the coast today behind it. So at historiskatlas.dk is where we submitted all the maps after we corrected them. And now they're able to be presented on top of maps that what we would call regular topographical maps. And I would encourage everyone to go and visit Historisk Atlas. It's a really fun and interesting site to visit if you have interest in maps and especially in old maps, because you can click the maps on and off and compare changes in time by doing that. And also you have an option of looking at all of these wonderful old maps. For instance, the Marcus Jordan map of Denmark, which I'm sure many of us know. Becomes clear that it's difficult to make a one-on-one comparison with Denmark. And you see actually Skagen is here and Skagen is here in the Jordan map. So it again has been difficult to make a complete and exact match. You can also see parts of Bornholm, which is actually here, and the map has it here. So it's been difficult to match it completely, but it's more or less correct. And we can see the maps in the spatial context that we would expect them to be in. And with that, I hope that I more or less hit the 15 minutes I was allocated. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for coming today. I think we have a time for questions.
We do indeed. I'm just closing down your presentation. Yep.
Yes, of course. Sorry.
Back in the studio. No, it's fine. That's a good thing about being the administrator, because then I can force the decisions here. So thank you so much, Thomas. It's really kind of a nerdy study you got there. So
yes.
As Thomas Olsen, he actually said in he posed the question: who is the main target audience when publishing these historical maps? That was exactly what I was thinking while I was listening along. Why are you doing such kind of a study or a mapping of maps?
I wouldn't want to answer on behalf of neither the museum nor the library, but because they would probably have their own interest. But I think that one of the main interests is really making these things available. Now there is as a learning institution and as a museum and as a library, we have an obligation to formulate ourselves to the general public and make things available for the greater good. And I would assume that is actually a major part of the drive. And I think in the end, this is actually money stemming from the ministry, the cultural ministry, I would assume. If anyone knows differently, please correct me, but that would be my assumption. And hence there is a certain amount of need to communicate with the audience, but also I think that it has an interest, a more historical interest in a way of using these maps to learn a little bit about mapping practices, learn about what has been mapped at different times, etc. Why did certain things get into the maps at particular points in history, and why do other things seem to pop out of the maps again later on? It's all part of ongoing research, which is the part that we will be engaged in also in the future.
So I was thinking, Thomas, that while you were speaking about the middle charts, that there were small animals and so on. I was thinking if we were going to make a map of today, we would put drones on them.
Yes, probably, and hidden Russian submarines, and Yes.
So yeah, I could see these maps with small drones, like
Yes. Yes.
they put like small dragons and so on. So we could
Yes.
put small drones because, for instance, I don't know if you're aware of that, but Danpilot, they're actually right now doing a project where they are with the drones steering their pilot boats. So they're doing pilotage with drones, and for that use, I have heard that it's very, very important that you know every square meter of the water and the coastline and so on. So that's really like the perfection of maps that must be available for that use. Very interesting for like, how did you, like the old map you showed us from the 1500 and what was it, 38 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How could you barely navigate there? It was really something like, oh no, there is land over there. So it's more like an estimate when you navigated there and you used your sextant and so on.
And some of these maps has been made for practical navigational purposes,
Yeah.
but most of them are probably not meant to be on board a ship. They might very well be meant to be displayed in the King's Royal Chambers or somewhere where everyone can look at them aghast and see the vast empire that he commands, or something like that. Whereas Jens Sørenson's court probably are made with a very specific purpose, actually, of navigation. Yes, you would see that they insert things into the map that has a military interest. So they're meant for a purpose.
Another interesting thing we were speaking about today, you would have like a naval chart for navigating with the merchant fleet. But at that time, navigating was a question of wars and conquering land and so on. So that was a completely different purpose that they originally was made for. Then, of course, to sell something to the different spots where you arrived, that was an add-on, but it was very much of this conquer the world. Or wasn't it? You said he was a spy, this guy Jens Sørensen.
Yes, when you are operating a sailing ship with this, and your only energy source is the wind, you tend not to sail too far away from the coastline. You don't want to go too far up because you might very easily get lost. And obviously, being close to the coastline is a very dangerous place to be when a storm breaks out, for instance. But you'll tend to be pretty close to the coastline. Sometimes you need to be able to navigate far away from the coastline, and then you need decent maps. And how many of these maps would actually make it onto the merchant fleet? I would assume not many, because they're so expensive, and they would probably have been regarded as state security issues. But eventually they will make their way onto the merchant ships as well, but it will take another 100 years or something like that.
Yes. Well, Thomas, we've got a few questions from our dear audience, and Thea Pedersen, she says, impressive. It's really a quirky and impressive job. Do you know if paper charts will continue to get updated, or are you afraid that all charts will only be updated online?
I would assume that it only gets updated online. You can always order a paper chart, as you can order a paper map, a topographical map. You can print it yourself, but basically it will all be digital, and you can compose your own maps and get whatever level of detail and whatever content you want into your map. It's pretty much where we are today. You can order a printed map, and I would assume for naval charts that you want to have a printed map on board your ship, so that when communication fails, at least you can take out your old map and still navigate without beaching your vessel somewhere. So I would assume that in the naval charts you would still want to have paper copies, but that doesn't hide the fact that everything is digital, and the printing of the map is just a nice add-on today.
Yes, you could definitely get hacked on board a ship, and then you would be without any. Yeah, that's also an issue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lene Mahler, she has a question for you, and she writes, I might have missed it, and then I'm really sorry. But where did you get all the historical maps? And was it just one library, like the Royal Library you were talking about, or how many, and which libraries and places did you need to visit to produce such a detailed selection of historical maps?
This is from two sources. It's the Royal Library and it's the Naval Museum in Helsingør, their collection as well.
Okay, yeah.
So from two different sources.
Yeah. Line Reinhardt, she has also a question for you, and she says, can you use the maps to also see changes in the coastline, or do they have too little detail on the map to determine changes over time?
I wouldn't want to use them for changes in the coastline, only at least not in any detailed studies, because you can see that in many of these maps, especially some of the Jens Sørensen's maps, you can see that they have focal points along the coastline. If you look at, for instance, the northern coast of Sjælland, you'll see that they know where Gilleleje is, they know and they know where Helsingør is. But in between all these points, they kind of just do these wave things, and we know that that is not the outline of the coast. Maybe I can.
So they made kind of an estimate of the coastline.
Yes, yes. It's not a precise. It's not a precise illustration in any way of the actual. I'm just looking. Yeah, maybe I can just. I'll just grab the screen just for illustrational purposes.
Yeah, do so.
Just to show you here. This is the map that I showed you before, and you can see. The northern coastline of Sjælland never looked like this, right? It's here. It never looked anything like this, and it never will look anything like this. Why they did it like this, I have no idea. But it seems mostly to be a matter of maybe making it look nice. I wouldn't want to speculate. But it never looked like this, and it never will look like this. But they kind of just drew lines in between known points.
I can see that. What is the name of Hundested? What did they call Hundested, or what?
I can't see. No, I can't see that. I can
see that København is København.
Yes, yes. You can see many of the things, and they know I mean, they have a very intricate knowledge, obviously, of the waters. It's the coastlines that seems to be. You wouldn't want to navigate by looking at this map and trying to find the places in the coastline. No.
Cool. Thank you so much, Thomas. I think this little menu with the old naval charts has come to an end. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of you out there to listening along and for your time spent with us. I hope you had a great lunch. We will be back in the Tidbit studio next week on Tuesday, and there we will have Mr. Johan Bergström from Lund University, who will speak about human error and accidents. So that's a completely different story, but it could also be caused by maps if they were not right. So it's about seafaring accidents and human errors. He's actually a really awesome human factor specialist. So if you are into that kind of aspects, do listen along on Tuesday at 12 o'clock. And then on Wednesday, we are back with our little research tidbit studio with Maritime Research Alliance. And there we will have Christian Slette from SDU, and he will be talking about digital twins and digitalization. So again, completely different from the topic of today, but again, really interesting and nice bites you can have while you are enjoying your lunch at home. So my colleague, she just dropped in the chat the link for the YouTube channel, because this tidbit will be registered. Or it was recorded, and it will be published on later today on the YouTube channel. So you can always go back and look at it, or share it with your colleagues and friends if you feel so. And then, of course, try to look into this historiskatlas.dk. and see what you can find. You might even make a nice printout for a beautiful poster on your wall. This is actually where we see the naval charts mostly in these days. So thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy your beautiful Wednesday. Hi, everyone, and see you next week. Bye-bye.